everybody. I hear I need to be very close to this mic.
Yes.
Great. It's wonderful to be here with you all today. I commend you for being out here in the cold and week after week. I know many of you have been here many weeks in a row standing up for democracy. And it's certainly a moment in which we have to stand up for our democracy. The current administration cares nothing for the law and invites violence against anyone who disagrees with them. Trump attacks the free press, attempting to cow them into subservience. He dismantles government agencies without any process. He is pressuring Republican-led states to redraw their district lines to ensure permanent Republican majorities. He's blowing small boats to smithereens off Venezuela because he suspects they carry drugs. But he pardoned the former president of Honduras, who was convicted by a New York jury of trafficking 400 tons of cocaine into the United States. He's trying to end vote by mail, and some of his allies have talked about taking the vote away from women. Believe it or not. Some of your neighbors might wonder, what is the point of standing out here every week? What are you accomplishing? Public gatherings like these are an important act of witness. You are expressing to each other and to everyone who sees you that the erosion of democracy in our country is not acceptable. By doing so, you encourage other people, the drivers coming by, to think about where they stand. By building community here together, you are creating the network to take further action together.
We love you! We love you!
This is how Americans will save our democracy, by mobilizing community by community. The power of people to make significant political change is my particular interest as a political scientist. Much of my teaching and research concerns the ways in which people use their voice, their vote, and their activism to remake their communities, their nation, and their world. And unsurprisingly, my academic interest in activism stems from the fact that I'm also an activist. I engage in this research out of an awe at what ordinary people have accomplished politically over the centuries. I engage in it to learn what can work in the future. And there's a lot of inspiration out there in the past and in the present. The people of Central and Eastern Europe who peacefully brought down their governments in 1989. The Civil Rights Movement, which transformed our own country. Right now, there's a wave of Gen Z protests around the world, protesting declining standards of living, democratic backsliding, and corruption. Sound familiar? They have already brought down corrupt governments in Bangladesh, Yemen, and this week in Bulgaria. We can learn from how others have succeeded in making great political change and use that knowledge to be strategic in our own efforts. Today, I want to share 3 important insights: where movement power comes from, the importance of being ready for what I call the movement moment, and marrying movements and elections. Where does the power of movement come from? Many people treat power as a zero-sum game. The president has all the power and I have none. With my students, I read the work of Gene Sharp, an advocate of nonviolent political action, who was inspired by and has since inspired many courageous activists. Sharp teaches us that government depends on our cooperation. What laws have you already obeyed today? Anybody? We're on the sidewalk. No speeding. We didn't park on the sidewalk. Right? Why do we obey the law? To keep ourselves safe, right? And we obey the traffic laws. I don't want to get run over. Right? Sometimes we're afraid of the penalties. We want to have a civil society, right? So there's a lot of reasons that we obey, and government depends. We sometimes forget that government depends on our willing cooperation. It would be impossible for the government to hire enough police officers to make us stop at every red light, right? It would just be unsustainable. The government depends on us deciding, because we want to be safe or because we believe there's the reason to follow the law, we want a civil society, for all those reasons that we don't want to get punished, that we obey. But just as we have the freedom to obey, we have the freedom not to obey. What is a strike, for example, but a withdrawal of cooperation by the workers with their employer? Power, Sharp teaches us, is not zero-sum. It is relational. We deny the power and legitimacy of a ruler when we withdraw our cooperation from them. My class has watched a documentary series called A Force More Powerful. I recommend it to all of you. If you Google the words "force more powerful," you'll see it. 6 episodes of stories of ordinary people and some extraordinary leaders who withdraw their cooperation from tyrannical leaders. From the independence movement in India and resistance to the Nazis in Denmark, from the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa to the effort to topple Pinochet in Chile, people nonviolently and successfully made political change happen. As Gandhi began his campaign to end colonial rule in India, he organized a salt march, a long walk to the sea to make salt, because the British had made salt making illegal and required Indians to buy salt from them. As he walked in every town, he pointed out that the only reason the British were able to rule India was because Indians helped them. Indians worked in the British colonial government as bureaucrats, army officers, police officers, enforcing British rule. Gandhi exhorted them to leave their jobs, and they did in the thousands. The British have not taken India from us, he told his followers. We have given it to them, and we can take it back. The fall of communism in Europe is a great example of the movement moment, the moment when organized opposition, regime weakness, and political opportunity collide to make extraordinary change possible. In 1989, one by one, the communist regimes of Central and Eastern Europe crumbled in the face of mass withdrawal of the people's consent. Many people saw it as sudden and surprising. The renowned political scientist, as late as 1984, wrote, "The likelihood of democratic development in Eastern Europe is nil." Yet 5 years later, things were definitely changing. In March of 1989, 100,000 people marched in Budapest. In November, the Berlin Wall came down. In December, Nicolae Ceausescu in Romania was shot dead. Looking back now, of course, scholars of democratic change can see where they should have seen it coming. Despite severe repression, there was organized dissent, which was ready to leave the way when the movement moment arrived. We all know about Lech Walesa leading the striking shipyard workers in Gdansk in 1980, but it's less well known that he was also a leader in the unsuccessful 1970 strikes. In an interview for A Force More Powerful, my second ad for this great documentary series, Walesa remembered how in 1970, the shipyard workers decided to march downtown to the government offices, but along the way they were attacked and provoked into violence by allies of the government. In the intervening years, Walesa said he had a lot of time to think about that march, and he decided that, should he ever again have the chance to lead a strike, he would organize a sit-down, lockdown strike behind the gates of the shipyard instead of risking confrontation with the military in the streets. And that, of course, is exactly what he did do when the moment was right in 1980 and Solidarity was born. When a new opportunity, a movement moment arose, Valenza and the shipyard workers were ready. When a mass movement arises and fosters major change, we can look back and see that there have been people working for change for a much longer period of time. Maybe smaller in numbers, maybe using different tactics, or with a slightly different message. But they were preparing the way all along to take advantage of the movement moment when it came along. We see the Montgomery bus boycott in 1955 as the beginning of the civil rights movement, and surely it was an important moment. But clearly activists had been working on civil rights issues long before that. The NAACP was founded in 1905 and brought numerous lawsuits to combat segregation and expand educational opportunities for African Americans in the first half of the 20th century. In the 30s, they hung a sign over Fifth Avenue. A man was lynched yesterday, a powerful silent protest against an ongoing injustice. CORE, another significant civil rights organization, was founded in 1942. And when the moment came for the civil rights movement, these organizations were ready. The climate in which people were now ready to march in the streets for civil rights, to attempt to register to vote despite the risks of violence and retaliation, to go to jail for ordering a cup of coffee, that climate was a wind in the sails of the work of the NAACP, CORE, and others, with occasional victories, frequent frustrations, and not a lot of attention. I'll turn here to the example of the Occupy movement to make the same point. At first, it was hard to know what the small group of people who had taken over a public plaza in Lower Manhattan were doing. But they stayed, and their numbers grew, and their focus on economic inequality remained clear. They sparked imitators in a plethora of cities, towns, and college campuses across America and around the world. Critics knocked the occupiers for not immediately offering a 10-point plan. But that criticism missed the point. Occupy's big message was that the very structures and practices of politics pushed the voices and the interests of the 99% to the side. The Tea Party had asked, why were the banks bailed out? The occupiers asked, why did we bail out the banks but foreclose on the homeowners caught up in the subprime tidal wave? Why is economic inequality so huge? Why does a small d democratic government pay such an inordinate amount of attention to the interests of those 1%? These were not new questions. People had been lobbying the government around these things for years, but the attention brought to those issues by Occupy created a new focus on those issues and new opportunities for those who've been working in the vineyards for years to finally reap a reward. We don't always know when the big wave of a powerful movement will arise. Although sometimes we can look back and see the elements that led to its emergence, a movement moment is hard to predict, but it's recognizable when it arrives, by the larger than usual number of people involved, by the excitement generated by a new issue, and often by new strategies or forms of activism. Movement moments can also be created by divisions among the rulers or weakness in the regime. I think we're beginning to see that today. Many communities across the regime, across the country, organizing local rallies like you have. Big crowds coming out to No Kings rallies on short notice. Thousands of New York City residents just this past weekend attending hands-off trainings to protect our neighbors from ICE. We're also seeing a lot of divisions on the Trump side, aren't we? And finally, the more divided they are, the more united we are. And finally, remember that next year we will have congressional elections. Historically, fewer Americans vote in midterm elections than in presidential elections. Your neighbors who voted in 2024 may not vote in 2026. But midterm elections are a chance to push Congress to use their power to oppose Trump's lawlessness. We must use our movement organizing to inspire people to participate in the 2026 elections, to vote, to mobilize others to vote, and to tell every incumbent and every candidate, Republican and Democrat, that they must be brave enough to stand up to Trump when he's wrong. This is an important time, and I hope you see your effort to come out here each week as a way to build the kind of power that will help us change the things we need to change to restore democracy in our country. Thanks.
Thank you.